Hi, everybody, and welcome to Nerdcast number 60, Daredevil and Jessica Jones, or The Devil in Miss Jones. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I am joined by our esteemed co-hosts. So,
a lovely bunch of coconuts?
Yes, a lovely bunch of cucumbers and eggplants. So let's see who we got. We got Max Darrett, who wrote beautifully his synopses for the shows. Hi, Max.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited to be here once again, and I'm very happy to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, the masterpiece from 2003, Ben Affleck's Daredevil.
Yes, starring Ben Affleck and that Irish guy.
Oh yeah,
and Samuel L. Jackson and
Samuel L. Jackson. Wait,
no, it wasn't him. It was Ving Rhames. No, wait, it wasn't
Michael
him.
Clark Duncan.
Thank
joking.
you.
I know it was.
No,
every black guy in every movie ever.
It was fucking Will Smith as the Kingpin. All right, so we also have Hannah. Hi, Hannah.
Hello.
Welcome. And we have Scott.
May the force be with you.
It will be when. Oh! And we have Mundane Matt, who just popped in. Hey, Matt.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm awake.
Okay, well, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
No, yeah, it's fine. We have Otter Jesus.
Hello.
Hi, Otter. And
It's my time to shine.
and we have Allison.
Okay.
So, no, I mean, I said that like with less enthusiasm than I should have.
No,
Doesn't sound like enthusiastic consent there, Allison.
It was
okay, well, all right. I'm not. That wasn't actually passive aggressive. I just didn't really have anything. I'm waiting to complain about Jessica Jones.
Okay.
Then I will have lots to say.
Okay, my point was that I was less enthusiastic when I said your name because I said, and we have Allison, which is kind of but I'm glad that you're here.
I'm not very exciting. I mean, we talk every day and.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, but I'm very grateful for that. Okay, so let's get into the topic. Matt, we're gonna talk about Jessica Jones, then we're gonna talk a little bit about Daredevil, and then I want to talk a little bit about what I find interesting about both of these shows in contrast with each other. So, Matt, why don't you do the reading, or not Matt, Max, why don't you do your short version of the reading for Jessica Jones?
Enunciate. Okay, so now, we were originally going to go over, but we're going to start with Jessica Jones because we have probably more to say on this, especially Allison. So after the groundbreaking success of Daredevil, which was so unprecedented by everybody, especially in this call, and myself included, mainstream comic book movie and TV show enthusiasts were all of a sudden accepting of the idea that we were going to see characters like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist enter this, I don't know whether you could say it's R-rated or just like a hard PG-13 sort of Marvel world, right? And even though the Netflix shows were all wild cards in terms of whether or not they would be successful, we all had greater faith that Daredevil would be in good hands because it had a stellar cast of well-established writers, directors, and actors, and all they had to do was make something that was at least a step up from the 2003 movie adaptation, right? So we had no idea what was in store for us with Melissa Rosenberg's take on Miss Jessica Jones. There is a well-known well, before we get into the actual specifics, I just sort of want to give this preface. There's a well-known comic book shop in Toronto that I frequent sometimes with my friends who happen to go there to have a hot beverage, shoot the shit, whatever. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever engaged with the clerks there or bought any of the material. Although the day that the Netflix shows were announced back in 2013, I went to the head clerk to ask him who these characters were that were going to be a part of this Defender series. And I already knew about Daredevil, obviously, but I asked him about who Luke Cage was and Iron Fist was. And after the initial geekgasm that the clerk had, he proceeded to tell me about the backstories of these characters in great detail. However, when I brought up the name Jessica Jones, he seemed a bit confused. He knew who she was, and he knew of her villains like the Purple Man, but he had to ask somebody else if they knew any more about her. So Jessica Jones is a private investigator with a dark past, and she's hired to expose the immoral habits of Hell's Kitchen, all while trying to keep an alcohol-fueled emotional distance. So who wants to start with their just initial thoughts on Jessica Jones, their initial impressions before we get into specifics?
Bored.
Allison.
No,
Yeah,
I I can always. All right. Let me just sort all the cards in my mind, all the various cards. First of all, I generally don't watch a lot of TV because I just can't sit down and watch TV. It's just painful for me. And when I first watched Jessica Jones, I watched the first episode and I was like, I don't really care, but about these people. However, I will see how this ends. So I watched the final episode and I was like, okay, that's a thing. And then I didn't want to do much more with it. But then Brian was like, you gotta watch it. So I decided to go backwards through the episodes, starting from the last one, to see if anything caught my interest. I found, and so bear in mind that my criticisms are by a person who was apathetic towards it, didn't watch the whole thing, and that. So it's a thing, and I think it's legitimate because if a show doesn't grip me, I'm not going to continue to watch. And I believe that's a legitimate criticism of this. That the characters were not interesting to me. I found the B characters to be particularly tedious. That would be the dreadlock guy, the two incest twins, and etc. In fact, the only character that I thought was particularly compelling was one that they totally shredded, apparently. That character was Simpson. And one of the things that I had a problem with the main character is that she is, throughout the course of the show, you find out that she's pretty much the most invulnerable character in the entire show. Like, the big bad is Kilgrave. He is basically incapable. Like, I mean, it takes a while for you to figure it out, as far as I can tell. But if she is the most invulnerable to the villain, it takes a lot of the tension out. Although I guess they tried to create some tension by saying, oh, he's trying to create the ability to fight. So the only actual arc of trying to upgrade himself and become capable of fighting was the villain, not her. And that sort of was tiresome. And the other thing is that there was sort of an asymmetrical morality going on that really bugged me. For example, Jessica Jones she essentially seduces a man whose wife she killed without telling him that she was the one who was responsible. Well, through Kilgrave's compulsion, she was the one responsible for killing his wife. That sat really, really uncomfortably with me. And then it got worse.
She didn't know.
She didn't know. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, she didn't know till she saw the picture, was it?
Yeah. Just wanted to say that. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. But at the same time as she did that, then she went and complained about Simpson having sex with Trish after attempting to murder her under Kilgrave's compulsion, and that seemed really hypocritical. And not to mention the whole season. The whole season, you're supposed to feel for Jessica Jones because she has post-traumatic stress syndrome from being under Kilgrave's compulsion, and you're supposed to indulge all of her emotional problems and her bitchiness and her general violence, or not, but not apathy towards morality. But at the same time, when you're looking at a character like Simpson, who has exactly the same moral problem except is weaker than Jessica. He's not as physically strong than her. He comes across as being mentally less strong, and he also comes across as well. He can't actually oppose Kilgrave's compulsion. So he is in all ways weaker. Like a weaker, not a weaker character, but a weaker person than Jessica, and he ends up going nuts under this. And I watched a bit of this, but I didn't see the entire thing. But it's obvious to me that he is actually having some sort of mentally debilitating problem, and he is gradually succumbing to it. And that indicated to me that he actually isn't as mentally tough as Jessica, and yet you're supposed to feel for her, but not for him. Seems odd. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode where he ends up having sex with Trish. I mean, it just, and bear in mind, I didn't watch past that episode because I ended up just bouncing around a bit. That after he has, well, he doesn't really have sex with her, and he just gives her head, right?
No, they end up having sex later. So you could say that they had sex.
Okay, all right. So that seemed like, and the way that Jessica and Trish were treating him after that seemed abruptly very cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, I'll let the others talk.
Okay, no, that's fine. I want to speak to what you said, but I'll let Scott, Max, and Otter go first. Okay, Scott.
Oh, I'm going to echo much of what Allison said, except I was just I found most of the characters kind of disposable. The drug addict guy could have just fucking completely done away with that dude. Just fuck him. Just he doesn't need to be there. But granted, and this is only going on. I've seen 3 episodes, so I haven't seen the entirety of it. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, if you will. But I know this is going to be a super stupid and petty thing to say, but God, the fucking theme song for that show is awful, and I almost turned it off just because of that. I was like, oh God, what is this, fucking Cinemax? What the fuck?
Oh, yeah. It does have like a Skinemax guitar solo quality to it, now that you mention it. It's like
bad.
It's like softcore porn music. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like softcore, soft jazz. It was just like, ugh, God. But nothing, and again, I only watched 3 episodes of it, but nothing grabbed me about it. Nothing said, hey, check this out, stick around for this because it's going to get good. It just kind of felt flat. It just didn't get its hooks in me. So I'm kind of impartial to the whole situation right now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Max?
Overall, I like the show. It's definitely not anywhere near as good as Daredevil. I would say, I'll get to what I did like in a second, but I just sort of want to reply to a couple things that Allison and Scott said. In terms of the Simpson character,
you're just projecting your own internal bias.
Yeah.
I
practically had a geekgasm. Hey, it's one of my kind. Anyways, I found that the first couple episodes that he was in, where he actually felt bad and he seemed like he really wanted to help, I felt that was kind of effective all the way up until the point that he actually helps capture Kilgrave initially. After that, he was pretty much just wasted. He makes this a moral turn later on in the series that I felt didn't really make that much sense, and he basically just became annoying anytime that he was on screen. And plus that whole arc where he's takes these pills and then he becomes as powerful as Jessica Jones is and throwing her through walls, that was just ridiculous. On the subject of Jessica Jones, the actual character, I sort of disagree. I think we're not actually supposed to like her. I think she's supposed to be an anti-hero. She's supposed to be dealing with a whole bunch of these moral issues, and I think the way that she handles them in comparison to the way that Matt Murdock handled them in Daredevil is that Daredevil, he makes it a point like Batman, you don't ever kill and you always have to deal appropriate justice, yet she feels so confused and so hopeless that she feels like the only way out of this problem that she has is to kill Kilgrave, right? And I found that to be kind of compelling. And one other thing that I found very compelling about the entire series is that in comparison to everything else that Marvel has done with their movies or their TV properties, is that I felt it was the most bold step for them to take with material, because the subjects that they're dealing with, whether you think they handled them well or not, you have to agree that they made a very, very risky jump in terms of tackling the most taboo, stigmatized tragedies that a human can endure. And Jessica Jones is a character who has had every aspect of her personhood violated. She's been toyed with physically, mentally, and sexually. And the effect that goes along with these actions, I believe, was portrayed convincingly and appropriately over the 13-episode arc by Kristen Ritter. I thought she did a great job. Anyways, anybody else want to follow up with that?
All right. I'm going to let Otter go and then Matt. So go ahead, Otter. Jesus.
Well, sorry. I don't know why my throat's so yucky. Okay, so I actually read the comics. And part of the thing about the Alias comics and turning it into a TV series that was part of the MCU is that they had an uphill battle because they literally had nothing that they could adapt. Pretty much everything that they could have adapted was what they tried to adapt in the series, and they ended up changing it a lot. And it just, I don't know, I really like the comics, but they just had a really uphill battle. Unlike Daredevil, where they had tons of source material. They had tons of source material. Everything they've done has had lots of source material that they could actually use. but not with Alias being adapted. I
Okay.
did like the series, but I felt like they made some really weird decisions, especially with the fact that they made it so that Purple Man actually raped her instead of just making her watch him rape other girls and stuff. That was weird because that's actually creepier. Also, Purple Man, they just kind of really shat all over him. Did I say shat? Yeah, I did. Uh, they just kind of crapped all over him and made him really a lame villain. And basically, he was not scary at all.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of my initial thoughts that I have right now.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Okay, Allison, do you want to respond right to Max before I get Matt to talk?
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, somebody in the chat mentioned that she actually did know that she had killed his wife. That's why she was watching him, and that's why she recognized the photo. Or it came home when she saw the photo. So I don't know if that I don't know if that's true, but that's what someone in the chat said. And it actually sort of makes sense why she would be watching him. She probably knew that she had killed his wife. So a lot of the emotional stuff that she's going through is the fact that she killed someone under Kilgrave's compulsion. And so one of the things that bugged me about the Simpson character and how Jessica and Simpson were treated differently is Simpson's under the same problem. And the things that we're supposed to give sympathy to Jessica for, we apparently don't give sympathy to Simpson for. Or we allow that these two other characters can treat him like shit. Trish and Jessica, they absolutely have no concern about his feelings about having been used by Kilgrave, even though as the audience we're supposed to have some sympathy, I assume. I mean, she's supposed to be unlikable, but we're supposed to have some sympathy for the fact that she was used by Kilgrave to kill someone. Same situation with Simpson, and we're not supposed to have any sympathy. And I know that we're not supposed to have any sympathy because we're supposed to be on Trish and Jessica's side as they degrade him for, I guess, girl power reasons. Because let me tell you, when he was saying, I can get you some properly trained soldiers to help you capture Kilgrave, and I can do this other stuff, it was like, yeah, she's like, no. And I'm like thinking, are you kidding me? If I were in her situation, I'd be like, yeah, that would really help. That would really freaking help. And maybe I should actually get a trained soldier driving the van rather than my friend who also happens to be my big one vulnerability weakness. I mean, serious. And then the reason why they didn't keep her Kilgrave captured is because she didn't check him for a tracking device. I mean, a lot of that was all just the fact that Jessica flies by the seat of her pants and doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. And having had someone who does know what he's doing offer help, and then she rejects it, and then they act in such, like the body language and the expressions that Jessica and Trish are giving off, and I understand that he turns crazy, which retroactively justifies what they did. But to me, at that point in time, Trish and Jessica lost all of my sympathy. Because nobody stopped and said, hey, you know what, maybe Simpson, having gone through the same thing I have gone through, I mean, she does at one point, but then the sympathy next episode, what was there, like a change in the writer? Because it just completely, like, that was just left. Well, yeah, let's recognize the fact that he's going through post-traumatic stress syndrome. Let's recognize the fact that he's a trained, like, I guess, cop who's used to trying to save people, and now he's been put in a position to hurt them. And that might really fuck with him. Let's set aside the fact that he's obviously mentally less stable than Jessica, therefore can't handle this as well as she can. Let's set aside all of that shit and just go with this, let's paint him as unsympathetic. And that was, that just, and unsympathetic, we're supposed to not feel sympathy for him, but we are supposed to feel sympathy for Jessica in the exact same circumstance. And that just bugged the fuck out of me.
Yeah. I want to respond to that too, but I'll wait. Matt, you've been waiting patiently.
It's all right. I liked the show. I liked all 13 episodes. It was not Daredevil by any stretch of the imagination, but it was definitely engaging television. I felt that they gave Kilgrave enough to make him a bad guy, because Marvel has a tendency of really overlooking how they present bad guys. If you look at, let's say, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Right.
Ronan the
Yeah.
Accuser is a great bad guy, but
Right.
Ronan the
Yeah.
Accuser is a great bad guy, but he's on the screen for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And this gave us the opportunity of especially in the later episodes, of seeing Kilgrave's motivations, and you can sympathize with this character because if you look at what was done to him, how he got his abilities, there's that line when they're in her house, and he's like, I don't know if people are being truthful or not. And that is actually a really hard-hitting line, and I think Tennant delivered it perfectly because you sit there and you go, well, yeah, shit. All right, I get that. Like, this guy can control people. How does he know if anyone's being sincere? He has literally no way of knowing if anyone's being sincere, and he has to pick and choose his words extremely carefully. But he's also like a child in that regard, too. Part of that comes from, I think, the whole issue with getting those powers when he was a kid, him controlling his parents like that, the way he was brought up. So there's all of these things that play with Kilgrave's character that I thought really added a whole bunch to the series, and I am actually really ticked off that he died because I'm like, no, I'd love to see him come back as a villain role again because of how well Tennant did. Jessica Jones herself as probably the most useless character on that show, in my opinion. Like, she was kind of the glue that kept it all together, but I was always like, man, get more Luke Cage up in this bitch. Do something else, because her self-loathing got old after a while. I understand her being upset over Kilgrave using her to kill Luke Cage's wife, and that whole plot too was a little bit odd because they never explained what Luke Cage's wife did. Am I the only one who caught that? Like,
Luke Cage's wife is the person who knew where the flash drive was hidden.
Well, I get that, but how did she know?
I think that she worked with the people or something. Like, she had some, like, it was like part of her job or something like that.
Because Luke glossed over that whole thing.
Well, no, Luke Cage mentions it while he's explaining the background, but it's really, like, it's easy to miss. Like, you could seriously be like, I don't know, just distracted for a moment and like miss that moment because it's really
I'll have to go back and
he
watch
glosses
it again.
over it very briefly while he's describing the background. But the idea is that she was the only person that Purple Man was aware of that had access or knew where the flash drive was.
See, that's a MacGuffin. You're not supposed to look too deeply into the MacGuffin.
No, that's very true.
You get sucked in and get lost forever.
Yeah.
I just felt that was probably like the worst handled part of the what's it called? The worst part of the show was that, because I felt that it was kind of like a driving force that wasn't as well fleshed out as it could have been. But going back to what Allison was saying about Simpson's character, I think that his character was a little bit odd to adapt because he's basically Nuke, or he goes by a couple different names in the comics, so I had to go look up who he was. But the whole thing with him and that transition of we need to get Kilgrave and then now we need to kill him, that was the whole conflict between him and Jessica. He wanted Kilgrave dead by any means necessary, right? That was his prime directive at that point. Jessica wanted Kilgrave alive in order to save Hope. She wanted him alive to prove his existence so she would get out of jail. And that was where their conflict came from. Simpson became, I think, obsessed with it, and then the whole thing with him bringing his soldier buddies to the house and then getting blown up, that was just fucking weird. Because I'm like, where did these guys come from? And then he goes back to the doctor and he gets on those pills, and there's a whole backstory with him that I think they set up in the season that we're going to see more of in season 2, provided we actually get a season 2. But I think the last thing I'll say on this right now is she's supposed to be in Hell's Kitchen, right? Like, that's part of it. She's in Hell's Kitchen. It didn't feel like Hell's Kitchen to me. It didn't feel like any other neighborhood in New York, maybe outside of like the Bronx or something. It didn't feel gritty. The world felt it didn't even really feel like a noir. It was like this weird in between that didn't work on any level.
Yeah, Allison, go ahead. Before I want to say my thing, but go ahead, Allison.
Okay. I want to engage in dialogue with Matt because he's picking up on some of the things that I picked up on too. Jessica Jones is boring. There's no real arc in terms of her getting stronger in order to face Kilgrave, and that's weird because they did that with Kilgrave instead of with her. So from the beginning to the end, she's exactly as able to deal with Kilgrave as she was. At the end, she's just as exactly able to deal with Kilgrave as she was at the beginning. No actual development.
She is legally hampered by the fact that Hope Schlottman is essentially prepared to serve a sentence for a crime that Kilgrave committed. That's the only thing that's really keeping Jessica from simply acting out.
How is keeping Kilgrave alive going to help that?
Well, I'm sorry, Matt. Matt, do you want to answer that? Because she's talking to you. So.
Oh, yeah, because yes, the whole thing was her character didn't necessarily get stronger, you could say, by the end, but she also was so afraid of him controlling her again that she was like actively going out of her way to completely not be anywhere near him. That was the thing. That was always that looming threat that he could show up at any point in time and just go, Jessica, jump, right? And at the whole way through, when we see that he controlled her, when we see him control everybody, we're meant to think, yes, he has these abilities. She broke free, but he could come back at any time. That was always the looming threat on the horizon. And I felt that added some tension to a couple of those scenes, especially the scene in the police station when all the cops got their guns pointed at each other. That was a really well done scene, and it was just like he's just toying with her, and he's toying with her because of that whole love-hate that he has for her, and it was just an interesting dynamic to watch unfold. So I feel at the end of it, she figured out that he couldn't control her. He knew she couldn't control her, which is why he forced his dad to work on the serum and get him stronger, just so he could overpower her. And that's what she used against him in the end. She used his hubris, she used his desire for her, and that's how she got him. And that, to me, shows that she actually learned a couple things for how to deal with this enemy. But, I mean, as for, like, a physical sense, no, she wasn't stronger.
No, and that's, I think, part of... there was no build-up. Sure, she had a constraint on her ability to act, but wasn't the constraint removed when Hope commits suicide during one episode?
No, she was doing everything to try to save Hope. Hope decided to take her own life so Jessica could kill Kilgrave. Like, that was the whole thing there.
And when did that happen?
That happened in, like, the...
very close to the end. It was like
the seventh. It was like the 8th or 9th episode or somewhere in there, and it was they had gotten.
So essentially, what I'm hearing is it's okay to have this murderous rapist on rampage through the Devil's Kitchen, in order to make sure that you clear the reputation of one woman.
Yes, and that boils down to the whole concept of her feeling guilt over Luke Cage's wife, whose name I can't remember right now. And these kind of things manifest themselves.
Okay, the more I find out about Jessica, the more her moral myopia and solipsism actually pisses me off. Yeah, it's like, okay, so how many people have to die?
It's actually really interesting because of Jessica's reluctance to step in and deal with the Purple Man directly, partly because she is afraid that he'll control her again, but secondly because she doesn't want Hope to get into any trouble, even though Simpson was willing to call his army buddies in to essentially take care of him. The amount of time before what she's willing to give up, like her fear of giving that up, actually causes more people to die in the interim than while Hope stays alive, and then ultimately Hope kills herself anyway to take herself out of the equation.
All right,
but there's also a line. There's also a line that Kilgrave says to her, and he goes, He's like, you could kill me, but you don't know what would happen when I die. You don't know what safeguards I've put into place. So he's using her humanity, her protecting of humanity against her. That's the whole thing. That's what keeps him alive. He knows how to play her, right? So when he says, if you kill me, these things will happen. If I don't check in at this time, this will happen. He sets all of these safeguards in place. And look at the whole thing that happened when he was captured. And the neighbor came over. Oh, are you Simpson? I have a message from Kilgrave. And then a bomb in the fucking bag. You know what I mean? Like, that whole thing was just showing us that he has the ability to set these safeguards in place. So her reluctance to kill him was actually working under the preponderance that she would be saving lives by not killing him. But in the reality, it's the exact opposite.
Oh, the other thing is that why didn't she just go to Alaska? Like, if all of the killing starts when she's around, like, why didn't she send him a note and say, hey, I'm gonna go hang with the bears. You come with me.
Actually, she tried to leave immediately when she learned,
to
but
Hong Kong, but
yeah.
not to bait him to go somewhere where he didn't have all these traps in place.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't,
Mm-hmm.
because there weren't people around. That's my point. You want me? You got to go to some place where your power is at a minimum, and then we just have and I'll just break your neck because you're like a weak kitten compared to me in terms of physical strength, which is another reason why the whole so afraid of Kilgrave just really didn't. It's like, and then it ends with her just snapping his neck. Like, oh, but anyway,
spoilers, guys.
Yeah, spoilers, whatever. I mean, I think people will know, right?
No, it's fine.
But I wanted to say something in particular to Matt, saying that Jessica is sort of a bland character. Yes, and the one time that I actually, oops, I'm gonna have to mute you, Matt, because you got some echo going on. The one time I actually started to see her as not being a completely flat and boring character was her interaction with Simpson, because he would actually call her on her shit and talk back to her. And I don't know. It might not have been enough. If Trish did that, I don't know if it was enough. But it seemed to be like they had a really good chemistry. Like her and the actor that played Simpson seemed to have a really good. We have to work together, but we don't like each other chemistry. And that was possibly the most interesting human interaction for me in the entire show. I really didn't like the relationship between Trish and, I mean, initially it was okay, but then they did the sex thing, and it was like, Hollywood can't do sex. It's obvious that they're not mammals, they're reptiles, but prior to that there was some interesting interplay, and I like that kind of they have two methods of dealing with this problem. And they clash, but they both have the same goal. And it would have been great to have it so that they had to work together to achieve their goal, because that would have set up some really interesting dynamics. Don't have to have any sexuality in that, but just it's like the buddy cop dynamic, and that would have been interesting if she had someone as powerful, or not necessarily as powerful, but at least capable, arguing with her, and fighting with her, but also trying to work together to achieve a goal. And that, to me, would have been far more interesting than which was this main team up between Trish and her, and Trish is pretty much basically useless and just a load.
Matt, do you want to respond to that before I say my piece?
No, I'm good. Oh, no, I was just going to say that the sex scenes were really awkward. I'm glad I'm not the only one to pick up on that.
No, they went on for too long, and they were PG sex scenes on top of that. So it's like, I'm not even getting any peen and boobs,
I think we get some side boob, and then, that was it.
Yeah, but I mean, why even do that? I don't know.
Can I say something? I know I'm butting in a lot, because I just really am excited about how much I didn't like this. Hollywood, here's a tip. Don't do oral sex. It's awkward. When you have sex in a movie, it's because you're trying to show something about the characters and some sort of intimacy. You're trying to make them more human. Having a guy under a sheet with his head in some woman's crotch is about the most unpleasant thing. And it's not that oral sex is unpleasant, but it just doesn't. It's like you're like, why does she put his sheet over his head? Does he not want to see his face? Is he like a double bagger? It just seemed really domineering, awkward, and unpleasant.
Actually, can I chime in on that one real quick? Because I have a theory.
Go ahead.
Okay. I actually discussed that scene with my girlfriend, and because I'm like, wow, that's I wasn't expecting that necessarily, and her response back was, well, if you think about it, the way Trish is so blocked off, so guarded. She lives in a penthouse with reinforced doors, bulletproof windows, all sorts of things. And here she has a guy who tried to kill her, and she lowered her guard enough when, coming to him on a human-to-human level, she allowed him to perform oral on her, to go down on her. That's a very intimate act, and one that requires a great deal of trust, right? So to me, that shows Trish's character is lowering the bridge a little bit, lowering those guards. Yes, it's an awkward scene to watch, but I think from a character level, it shows that she's accepting of the world around her a little bit and maybe coming to terms with a bit of it, and then also just allowing herself to express some shit. I mean, that's what I took from that scene.
Yeah, I could see that. I just thought it was just them trying to be sexually edgy. as fuck.
It's probably
Yeah.
that too.
But,
I
I
don't
mean,
read all this shit.
I just thought it was like
But
edgy.
they have to consider how it plays the audience, right?
Well, there's like a, like, I want to say my thing about this because I think it's all related. I thought it was a solid show and I liked it. My only issues with it pretty much echo what most people are saying. Like, the Jessica Jones character herself was actually the least likable character for me. I thought the supporting cast was much better than she was. And if it, like, Luke Cage, for example, was immediately likable from the moment I saw him come on, for me anyway. And I also liked the Trish Walker character as a female character more than Jessica Jones. As far as The Simpsons goes, the thing about him that I find is really interesting is that Jessica is supposed to be going through PTSD from her experiences with Kilgrave. And everyone is expected, if not straight up commanded, to feel sympathy for her. They do this with the audience by giving us flashbacks and making her look haunted and drunk. And they push that on us. They basically say you have to feel sympathy for her because she's had it hard, and the fact that she's angry and bitter and she walks around with a chip on her shoulder and drinks hard and does a shit job like her private eye job or whatever. That's all just a consequence of her experience with Kilgrave. Because if you watch if you know like what happened at first when she initially found out she had powers, she was Trish had to convince her to use them to be a superhero, which she did not want to do, which I find really strange. And then when she did do it, shortly after she begins that career fighting crime, Kilgrave comes along and uses her, and then it changes her, and she becomes bitter and cynical and just sort of like generally, uninterested in humanity in general, and she just wants to basically be at the bottom of a bottle for several years. But Simpson, who is also he's also a war hero and also has PTSD and essentially has had the same experience. While at first, when it turns out that he was like mind controlled by Kilgrave to kill Trish Walker, doesn't succeed, and then recovers later on because Jessica saved his life, to realize what he had almost done, becomes incredibly sympathetic or toward what he had done, but also really remorseful. He wants to make things right. He goes to Walker's place to make sure that the body is still there, like the things played out the way he remembered them. Then when he sees that she's afraid of him, he's actually understanding of that. He fears himself. He does everything he can to try to essentially make Walker feel as comfortable as possible because he put her in a life-threatening situation. And then she lets him in and they get close. And I found him immediately likable too, especially when I saw that he wasn't just some one-off cop that was just used as as a tool by Kilgrave, and he was actually a person. But when he goes full-on psycho, later on, which is a strange twist, but before that happens, this is the thing that I find that is really kind of interesting. When we first meet Simpson, he's mind controlled by Kilgrave, and so he's like a mindless tool. Then after that ends, he basically becomes really remorseful, and he's like, holy shit, what have I done? I want to go make things right. He talks to Walker, he talks to Jessica for a little bit. Both of them are very much like, you need to leave this alone. You don't want to get involved with this because it's too much for you or whatever. But he's determined. He's like, I was a soldier, I know how to deal with stuff, I can help, I can be of assistance. He's essentially offering his services, and he's willing to essentially put his life on the line to do the right thing because he felt that what had happened was wrong. He meets resistance at every turn. Then he goes straight to the source, talks to Walker for a while, and they end up talking through a door at each other. And Walker, after their conversation, Walker realizes that Simpson is he's a decent guy, and she decides to let him in. He gives her a gun to protect herself and everything. And they start, boning. I mean, I don't even know that this is the thing about Jessica Jones I find interesting. People who are engaged in sexual relationships in the show, except for some of the really, really minor characters that are married and stuff, do not appear to be dating. They appear to be fucking, which I find interesting. Like, you don't see like Jessica and Luke Cage like, you know, going on dates. They basically eat between fuck sessions. And Patsy Walker and Simpson are the same. We see them fucking, but we don't see them dating. So I can't determine whether a relationship or something is blossoming, or if they're just like, you know, I like your bod, I want it right now mode. So
I need to go to Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah. So like Simpson and Patsy Walker appear to get closer in a romantic way, but then when Simpson continues to offer services and he has intel, he speaks in military speak, you know, sometimes when he like offers his services, and that causes Jessica Jones to roll her eyes. By the way, Jessica Jones pretty much rolls her eyes at everyone that's not Patsy Walker. But she rolls her eyes at him like, you know, G.I. Joe, you're not that useful, like whatever, you know, like I don't want your help specifically. And I think that it's the one thing that stands out for me that I find really interesting about it is Patsy Walker rejects Simpson at one point. She says, you know, she doesn't like the fact that he doesn't like Jessica Jones, like that he doesn't just like her immediately in the same way that she does, and it actually causes her to reject him romantically and push him away. And she even, I think she says something to the effect of at one point, you know, it was fun, like I liked fucking you, but I don't really like, you know, want to. You're not like we're not in a relationship. You don't have any sort of you know, you don't have any influence over my decisions. You know, you're basically my fuck toy, and you're talking back, and I don't like that, and you need to go away. And that's basically what she does. She dismisses Simpson, he goes away, and then he tries to act on his own, and that's when the whole thing with the bomb goes off, and then he ends up taking pills. And he goes fucking completely mental psycho. And so when I look at how the Simpson character develops, he actually does the most changing throughout the whole show. And the Patsy Walker character does go through a lot of changes too, which is why I like her, but I don't like the way that she treats Simpson. I think it comes out of left field. But I think that there may be ideological reasons for that. So first, I'm gonna like stop right now, and I'll let Allison say something, and then I'll give it to Max.
Okay, this is really quick. I wanted to punch Jessica in the face during the hermetically sealed room scene where she says, "Oh, I bet you killed a bunch of villagers." It's like, this guy has probably served his country more than you could ever conceive of, and you're mocking. Yeah, okay. I
have a feeling there's like an anti-military sentiment that goes throughout it, because it's really interesting that Simpson and Jessica both had PTSD, but Simpson's experiences we're not supposed to sympathize with, because he's a soldier, and soldiers are the tool of the patriarchy, and they kill people, and they're awful people. But Jessica's PTSD is very special, and we need to cherish it, and we not only need to help her get over it, but we need to like relive it with her at every given moment.
It's because she was raped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, rape is worse than war now.
Mm-hmm.
But Allison, do you want to say something else, or?
Nope.
Okay. So Max.
Yeah, rape is always worse than murder. But anyways, just wanted to go back and reply to a couple things that were said before, and I'll be very quick. In regards to Kilgrave, like the thing about him is that he's a villain where certain aspects of his character were written exceptionally well, in my opinion, and others were done exceptionally poorly, leading to just sort of like an overall decent villain, sort of a throwaway. It's just in terms of the things that were good, there's somebody with a messed up moral compass, like that he has. It's genuinely frightening in certain circumstances. It causes the audience, and me especially, to think about what you would do if you could make people do whatever you want, and that's frightening to me. And aside from that, those circumstances where that actually causes me to actually enjoy him as a villain, there are other times where he just comes across as a petulant child. Like anytime he just screams out, "Jessica!" It's so annoying. It's like watching a child, and he's just, all that stuff that they were building up that made him so good is just thrown away. Like whenever he doesn't get his way, it's a toss of the dice. It's either interesting or it's just annoying. Like one of my favorite parts of the show, like I think anybody who did find something to enjoy as part of the show, was the terrifying scene where he says, you know, kill her with the death by 1,000 cuts, and that was just terrifying to me. And it's just, what lengths will this guy go to when he doesn't get his way? And the unfortunate thing about that is that you can do a lot of terrifying things, but you can also do just a whole bunch of terrible things for him as a character where he just comes across as annoying. And as for Jessica Jones, even though I found her to be interesting in a lot of respects because I find that the way that she deals with moral dilemmas was done on a more human level compared to Daredevil, where he was a little bit more noble. I will wholeheartedly agree with all of you that she is boring as hell in the sense that she never develops as a character. Like, by the end of the season, she is the exact same person as she was at the beginning. I mean, like, sure, she did some good stuff, but what was the last shot of the show? She was just sitting at her desk again, drinking some booze, and Malcolm, who I believe had probably the most character development out of anybody on the show, he was answering her phone, and that was the last shot of the show. You know.
Well, I mean, she's a woman. We can't expect women to change. We have to accept them as they are because they have value by default. So
because she's a strong, independent woman that don't need no man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Otter Jesus.
Okay, one of the things that a lot of people either aren't realizing or aren't giving as much credit to is the fact that she doesn't want to be a hero, but she's being forced in the role as a hero. Because at the beginning she's like, "I'm just gonna run. I don't care." And she got her superpowers when her entire family was killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's really upsetting. Like, you ignore the rape stuff and the post-traumatic stuff with the rape, but that's very traumatic.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to ask you a question real quick. If Jessica doesn't want to be a hero and is written in such a way that she doesn't want to do this, and there isn't a lot of source material to draw from to make the show at all, that they actually had to kind of come to a lot of their own conclusions or add in order to develop enough plot to write a 13-episode season, why do you think they chose that character to even portray in the first place? When she could have, why do you think they chose? And this isn't rhetorical, like I know the answer or anything. I'm genuinely curious. Why would Marvel say, we want to take this character that we don't have a lot of material on, and we're going to base it mostly off of this specific series called Alias, which is the one that they mostly based it on, but we're going to have to add a bunch of shit because we need to make it cohesive with everything else, and also kind of tease Luke Cage for his own show. Why would you choose the Jessica Jones character at all when they when they could go with any number of other characters?
It's because of the fact that with Luke Cage, it was a way to introduce Luke Cage, and she's this character who I think will be, for the Defenders, actually Heroes for Hire. That's what they should be called. She'll be the character who's like, "Fuck you guys, this is stupid." Like, no, come on, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And that'll be that.
Mm.
So I think it makes sense because I haven't heard that they're going to do another season, but I think it makes sense that they did this with her. It's just Netflix. I blame Netflix for most of the problems with the series because they, instead of doing a procedural show where it's more like Veronica Mars, where there's a case every episode, which would be great because she has a PI. Instead of doing that, Netflix is like, no, it has to be something where people want to watch it all in one sitting, where it's a continuous story, but then because of that, you have to spin your wheels and not make a whole lot of sense. This is another problem I had with Daredevil as well. Daredevil does this too. A lot of spinning of wheels, a lot of people talking about something over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so there's that issue. I can't remember what I was just saying before that when you interrupted me, Brian.
Sorry.
No,
well, if you remember, I can just chime back in. So.
Well, what was I saying though?
You were saying that we're not giving enough credit to the fact that she doesn't want to be a superhero. Okay. And to be honest, that's fine. I don't have a problem with her not wanting to be a superhero. What I have a problem with are the double standards regarding the sympathy for her PTSD, but then we can't have sympathy for Simons. So that's Simpson.
Okay, yes. I understand that, and that's legitimate, but yeah, I'm like, well, if they're going to do that, then if you're going to complain about that, you need to complain about everything else ever. And it's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. That's you. Okay, but yeah, she didn't want to be a hero. She's forced into being a hero. It's basically like Spider-Man, but if Spider-Man was like, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing she can do. Like Spider-Man couldn't just make his powers go away. But she's like, okay, I have powers, but I don't want the responsibility or the powers. Leave me alone. but she gets dragged into it because she has powers. She tried being a superhero because Trish is like, oh, you should do it, even though Trish was the one who wanted to be the superhero and was jealous. She tries doing that. Purple Man, I'm always going to call him that. I don't care what people think.
Please call him Purple Man. That's fine.
Purple Man. He sees her, realizes she has powers. I'm going to use her. Like in the comics, he was attracted to her because of the powers. Then he had her go try to beat up Daredevil. But oops, Scarlet Witch was also wearing red.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how she ends up just in the comics. She's like, no more superheroing for me. But they had to change that and stuff. Anyways.
Oh.
So yeah, she doesn't want to be a hero, but she's forced into it. I'm going to keep repeating that because people need to realize this. The series was not a superhero series. There were people who were like, oh yeah, no, it is a superhero series. The first female superhero series. The articles everywhere. No. She's not a superhero. The series is not a superhero series.
Okay, so you're arguing that it's not a superhero series. It's just a series with about a woman with powers that lives in the universe of superheroes. Really?
Yeah, it's not doing what people are thinking. Where oh, she's this hero and she's supposed to be likable and she's supposed to be this like really be held up with like Iron Man or something or even Daredevil. No, she's not because she doesn't wear a costume. She doesn't want to do what she's doing, but she's a good PI. They show that she's a good PI, but they don't focus on it very much because Netflix was like, no, it has to be this thing that goes on and on and on, and it just, yeah, it's bad in terms of that. But
Well, do you think of it in terms of like in D&D, there's deities and then there's demigods, and the superheroes would be the equivalent of deities, and she would be more like among the demigods. You know, where she has the powers, but she's not really.
She's like just sort of a peasant.
Okay. Well, let Max. You want to respond to me, and then I'll let Hannah go.
Yeah, just one very quick thing. It's like you were just asking why they went with Jessica Jones compared to any other character, and I understand that because when I initially heard they were going to do a more R-rated TV series, I wanted to see guys like Blade, I want to see guys like the Punisher, which they're doing, but this might be a reason, Otter, maybe you can answer this for me, but when you're doing an Avengers movie, you have obligations to sort of do the individual movies, and you have to do Iron Man, you have to do Hulk, you have to do Thor. Is Jessica Jones a main player in the Defenders in the comics, and she was just an obligation to go along with Daredevil and Luke Cage?
No.
No?
The Defenders had Hulk in it, Doctor Strange, a bunch of other people. They're using that name because it sounds similar to the Avengers, but it's really just going to be Heroes for Hire, unless they do something really weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. Okay, maybe it was just like an initially good pitch that they made.
Well, the pitch was probably like, hey, this will make sense, and she'll be a good character because she'll like butt heads with each of them, and she'll also be in a relationship with Luke Cage, and that'll create drama there. And I think that actually makes sense. I just wish they'd call it Heroes for Hire.
Sure.
Yeah, I think Defenders just sounds more marketable. And the Defenders team was always changing. It was a team that only came together for a specific purpose, and then they go their separate ways, and they never really got along. That was sort of like the thing that made them interesting in terms of those short series. But okay, so Hannah.
All right, I want to go back to the PTSD thing because of the discrepancy in sympathy and how that's been under discussion and everything, and it's actually not it's not entirely off. In that is kind of how society responds differently to men and women. And if you think about it, it's also somewhat accurately portraying male and female responses to their circumstances, because you have a male PTSD sufferer who's reacting to his perception of his effect on other people. And what are guys taught as they're growing up? Is the thing that makes them valuable is what they can do for others and how they impact the world around them. Whereas you have the female PTSD sufferer reacting to her perception of others' effects on her. And so she becomes all guarded, and she becomes all dark and resentful and solipsistic and everything. And it's a very it's actually a very accurate portrayal of the way society teaches girls to act about their experiences. Everything is internal, and everything is defined internally, and her internal responses justify her reactions regardless of their impact on other people because of the impact that she experiences. And so she's going to be everything that you guys have described. because she was raised to feel entitled to basically better treatment. And granted, now her whole situation in the show is different, but it's still different for females than for males in that perception. And of course, the show is going to be pulling at the audience to have a greater level of sympathy for her internal processes, her internal responses to her experiences than to his internal responses to his experiences, because we're all taught to view men as utilitarian and women as human beings. So this is actually pretty standard. And it's just, like Otter just typed in chat, her having superpowers makes her look like an asshole because of that. But the truth is, women are, in general, assholes because of that.
Yeah, I wanna build on what Hannah's saying. We have two characters, Jessica Jones, who in the end, and pretty much, and maybe this is colored because I watched the end, so she's invulnerable to the big bad, and she's so much more physically capable than him. And she spends the entire goddamn season moping about how vulnerable she is. And then in turn, you have this guy, Simpson, who is entirely vulnerable to the big bad and wants to do something to stop him. But he's obviously enduring post-traumatic stress syndrome for having been out of having lost control over himself. And so he's obviously trying to gain some control over him. And Trish and Jessica don't even stop once to say, hey, how has this affected you? Because you're obviously, I mean, Jessica makes it, why don't you go to this therapy group? But it would have been, I think, more impactful for Trish to maybe stop and say, hey, this must have been really hard on you. I think and to me, the whole arc of Simpson just becoming increasingly erratic was the arc of a guy who did not have the same mental strength as Jessica, and that's the alternative thing. Jessica in this series has greater mental resilience than Simpson, and it is obvious, and yet she's allowed to mope and bitch and be a jerk because of her experience, even though she demonstrates a greater mental resilience. She is stronger than Simpson, and we don't hold her to that, and we don't have an expectation that she'd give Simpson some kind of she doesn't act like a hero. She does not act like the person who's the strongest person in this series. She doesn't say, you know what?
What?
What the heck was that?
Allison just got abducted by aliens.
That's it. Allison just got abducted by aliens.
Allison, did BuzzFeed come and get you from yesterday? Allison?
She's gonna come back angry and bitter, and well, maybe it was Nephenor, and they're just gonna go hang out.
Oh, okay. Oh, it was your compressor.
If you're gonna get abducted by aliens, you just go for Nephenor. At least he's fun to hang out with.
Allison, can you talk, or should we move on? I have to finish, but the fucking compressor. Okay. I'm gonna let. Oh, go ahead, Hannah. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say what I was basically talking about here is, and this is something that you can see in real life. And you look at the difference in how society responds to, say, political organizations talking about women having experienced sexual violence, and how people have responded profoundly to that, and we've had changes in legislation, and there's all these systems in place to support women that have experienced sexual violence. And then we have, for a century, we've had men coming home from war after war after war with post-traumatic stress disorder from profound trauma that they have experienced in the midst of life-threatening conflicts. And rape isn't always life-threatening. Sometimes there is is life-threatening violence involved, but it's not necessarily an immediate. It's very upsetting. I will admit, it's very upsetting to have to have somebody take away your ability to control what's going on with your body. But it honestly doesn't measure up to believing that in the next couple of moments you are going to die. It's hard to describe that. But in any case, we don't. It took a huge amount of activism to get anything in place really to help out and even get public sympathy for men who come back from war with PTSD. And then we went through decades and decades of not understanding it, even when there were no systems in place to support women who had gone through sexual violence and come out of it with PTSD or anything similar, any level of trauma. It was just always understood that there would be trauma. It was always understood that they weren't just going to get back on the horse. It was always understood. It's portrayed that way in television and movies, old shows. I even remember like an old episode of the Alfred Hitchcock show that portrayed that trauma in the course of and portrayed white knighting in the course of a show in which the husband of a victim ends up killing the wrong guy because she fingers him on the street. There he is, you know.
Oh, I remember that.
And we have all the sympathy in the world when a woman has experienced a profound trauma or even a severe trauma or even a mild trauma and comes out of it with dysfunctional behavior and dysfunctional emotional baggage because of it. It takes you about have to move the earth to get that kind of sympathy for a man. And so it's not inaccurate to portray it that way, and to sort of communicate with the viewer that way. It's not fair, but it's not inaccurate.
And I understand what you're saying. And in my personal opinion, however, and this is actually me respecting the Jessica Jones character more than anyone else that I've heard remark. Well, maybe not in this panel, but she comes across as being stronger than Simpson. But she spends the entire season essentially, and I would say whining about what happened to her rather than what she failed to do. Whereas Simpson is upset over failing to fulfill his role as a protector, but she is stronger than him. Therefore, I'm personally going to hold her to the standard of, as the strongest character in the show, seeing herself in terms of protecting the other characters, not in terms of what happens to her, but in terms of what she fails to do in terms of protecting the others. And I didn't see that, and it turns her in an asshole in my mind. And then when she failed to recognize this is what was happening to Simpson, because that's how I read the whole Simpson arc, is that he was used to hurt someone, and that just he went into this downward spiral of trying to gain back his self-control over himself, which ended up including these freaking combat drugs. And that seems more sympathetic to me, even with his emotional outbursts and excesses, that his trauma, his unresolved trauma was essentially failing to live up to the protector role, than whatever Jessica Jones was, and then all the crap that she unleashed because of her failures, because of her trauma. And just to get back to what Otter was saying, this show would have been so much better if it was a procedural or an actual show about a private investigator, because you'll notice with shows about real private investigators, the show doesn't center on the private investigator. They stumble into someone else's story. This was all centered on Jessica, and it suffered for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Max, do you have time to do your reading for Daredevil?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and do the reading for Daredevil, and then if you need to take off, you can go.
Okay, yeah, I gotta go in a second, guys. But very quickly, let's get to the good stuff. So, with the critical and financial success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, many were wondering if the studio could actually make a bold leap into television, even though they had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which some enjoy more with every episode. They didn't have any television shows based on some of their more beloved core characters, and though DC still has a lot to prove with their movie universe, they've had definitively more success with shows like Arrow and The Flash, which some say might be the best superhero show on television. However, on November 7th, 2013, a deal was struck with Netflix to bring some of the less recognizable heroes to the smaller screen. We just discussed Jessica Jones, and we're about to discuss Daredevil, but soon to come are Luke Cage and Iron Fist, culminating in an Avengers-type crossover called, like we just said before, The Defenders. Now, the level of quality these shows have displayed has blown us away. primarily Daredevil more so than Jessica Jones, although a lot of people do enjoy Jones. And we are here to discuss Daredevil right now, starting with who wants to talk first?
Okay, so let me go first because I can see how easily this shit can snowball. Unless, actually, you know what? First off, Max, thanks for doing the write-ups. As Scott said, you're a champ, and really appreciate it. So if you need to go, feel free to bow out. And people in the chat, if you guys want to ship him or whatever, please do so in the chat if you want to, because that's apparently how we say goodbye to people now. We just ship them with other people, and there you go.
Feed my Simpsons ego. All right,
yes.
See you later, guys.
Who do you ship him with, though?
We'll see what they say. I mean, he's been shipped with Scott and the Doge
Vernaculus
and Vernaculus, yes. So
because the only option now is Mundane Matt.
Yeah. If Matt's down.
Simpsons
okay.
and Kevin Smith. I'm down. Let's go. All right, see you later, guys.
All right, bye, man. Okay, speaking of Mundane Matt, so let's talk a little bit about Daredevil. Matt, how did you like it? How did you like Daredevil? What do you think? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I stepped away for a second. No, I've loved Daredevil. I've already watched it twice.
Yeah.
It's a well-paced show. I mean, look, 12 years ago, we had the Ben Affleck version, which I will say that I've always enjoyed.
That's one of my guilty pleasures too.
It is. It's not
the director's cut is really good.
It's just delightfully mediocre. But it did introduce the world to Evanescence, so there is that.
Oh, really, Matt? I'm sorry. I just have to break in. Come on, man. Don't go there.
I actually saw Evanescence. I saw them live when that movie came out.
I'm sorry.
One of my friends dragged me. He was like, "Let's go see them in concert." I was like, "Who are they?" They did the song from the Daredevil movie. I was like, "Oh, okay."
You have the worst friends ever, Brian. I'm sorry.
I'm not. He's not my friend anymore.
Good.
Nope. He's dead now. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, Matt. So the new Daredevil show.
The new show is great. Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock is so awesome. I think he embodies the character so well. Foggy Nelson, what's his name? Eldon Hudson. I'm saying that correctly? I just know him as Fulton Reed from Mighty Ducks.
Wow.
That's how I know him. And I was watching Hunger Games Part 2 the other day, and I was like, look, it's Foggy, because this movie sucks. It's a very well done show. I mean, Stephen DeKnight, who did Spartacus on Starz, knows how to create compelling television. Right? Spartacus in its last couple seasons was pretty amazing, and they brought a lot of that over to Daredevil, and I am bummed that Stephen DeKnight is not coming back to showrun season 2. A couple of the other producers are taking it over, so I'm a little bit concerned that I won't have that same level of care that went into the season. But the thing is, people still talk about Daredevil 8 months later because of how good it is, because of how awesome it is, and how they treated the setup of Hell's Kitchen and that whole world. Plus, I mean, Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk was just pretty sublime, in my opinion.
Oh, he fucking Jesus. Okay,
No, he was great. He was just fucking great. Yeah. You're just like, oh, I could see him as Kingpin, but then his performance of the character, giving him the depth that he gave him. I mean, as much as I enjoyed Michael Clark Duncan in the role back in 2003, because I thought he brought more of a comic booky vibe to it, D'Onofrio brought realism to the character. He wasn't this huge hulking mass as he was portrayed in the comics, but he is a larger-than-life guy, and his desire to rebuild the city was interesting. Like the dynamic between what Daredevil wanted and what he wanted were somewhat closely aligned, but on opposite ends of the spectrum, and it was just such a well-crafted show. And I think part of this has to do with the fact that Drew Goddard created the show. He wrote the first couple episodes. He did Cabin in the Woods. He wrote Cloverfield. He wrote a couple other things. He wrote The Martian, right? He was going to direct it, but Ridley Scott came in and basically ousted him from the role. But he crafted this very well put together world, And we're better off, I think, as comic book fans as a result of people who have a much love for the property. In the case of Jessica Jones, it was Melissa Rosenberg who did the Twilight movies. She came in, so there might have been I don't think as nuanced in this particular world as
she actually did a lot of really good work on Dexter.
The first couple seasons of Dexter, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So it sounded kind of unfair with just saying she wrote the 12.
No, but the way Hollywood works is you're only as good as your last picture. So you can say, and that's true. It's Melissa Rosenberg's work on Dexter season 1 and 2 are great. She was awesome as the head writer. Then she went and wrote 5 Twilight films.
Mm-hmm.
She made a bunch of money.
Made a bunch of money. Yeah, made a bunch of money. God damn. I would want some of that money. I would write a Twilight movie.
There were 5 Twilight movies?
They broke the 4th book into 2 movies because
that's what you do. That's what you do.
Makes sense.
Okay, so Matt, was that all? Did you want to say anything else?
It's an awesome show. I love it.
Yeah. I thought it was really good. I think, Scott, you made a really great point. I'm going to say it on air, even though it's your point. Yeah, the one thing I didn't like about Daredevil is the sparks coming off his outfit. The last episode, when he was fighting Kingpin, he's hitting him with the stick, and there's these sparks that are coming off of him. I actually, I thought it was really funny and dumb, too. I was like, what is this, a fucking fighting game? And I like fighting games, but I wouldn't want to see that in a movie. The other thing is I'm glad. It looks like because I don't know if you guys saw the trailer for the season 2, but it looks like they streamlined the costume. It doesn't look like it's going to be the same, and I'm glad about that because I thought that while it was cool to see it at the end of the first season, it looked a little too busy and armored, and it should have been more form-fitting and focused on agility. Like literally, Daredevil was slower when he was wearing his costume at the end than when he was wearing the black outfit throughout the entire series.
I liked it when he was like Iron Fist.
What?
I liked it when he was dressed like Iron Fist more.
Well, that was based on the Frank Miller run where
but he looks exactly like Iron Fist in that outfit, except it's black.
He kind of does, yeah. But I liked it. I did. But I'm glad that he's wearing the red outfit with the horns because that's very iconic. I just want them to get away from too much molding and plating and stuff and just make it more like just like a leather outfit or something.
Too
like
Batman-y.
I was gonna say a little too like Batman-y, Iron Man-y, like just like heavy, right. Because he's supposed to be focused on agility. But that's a super tiny gripe. I mean, like aside from that though, I liked it a lot. I think Wilson Fisk is one of Marvel's best villains, if not the best one. Just because he's very well developed and he does. They humanize him a lot, and actually, the thing that really makes Daredevil interesting is when you look at Daredevil in contrast with Jessica Jones. Now, look, I know it's not fair to compare the two as though they are completely parallel, but I am looking at it more like a what is Jessica Jones like in terms of its target audience? Because no matter if you're basing it on comics, if you're basing it on some other sort of material, that is not reason enough to adapt it. You want to, if you're making an adaptation that's basically targeting a larger audience and you invested a lot of money, you're also trying to attract people to watch it. And I think that Jessica and the way that Jessica and Daredevil stand when they're the only shows that are on, and the way that they exist in contrast to each other, I find it to be very interesting. So I want to, well, Scott, if you want to make a quick point, go ahead. I wanted to actually talk about my comparison thing, but go ahead.
Well, the armor thing, it just kind of dawned on me. I hadn't thought about this before, but he's not good at being a superhero yet, so he needs the armor. I mean, I think we saw that, he got his ass beat pretty well to hell all throughout the series. So
although that's true, but Daredevil often does.
Well,
okay, he's not,
fair enough.
This is the thing about it.
Think about it in the context of he's just starting at this and he hasn't gotten good yet. So maybe they'll scale it back some once he gets some, like more training with Stick or somebody else or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can
No,
hope
they-
anyway. So
Yeah, they may do that. I think that what one of the things that's really interesting about the way Marvel Comics, in contrast to DC Comics, when they write their characters, they have this thing. Well, at least they did when I used to read them. So if you guys are more like up to date, then feel free to school me on it. But when I used to read them, Marvel used to rank its characters. They would say Daredevil and Punisher, they operate at this level. This is the kind of stuff they deal
They
with.
still do that.
Yeah, and like guys like the Fantastic Four and the Avengers, they operate at this level. And so basically, there's a pay grade, as you can say. So Daredevil's fighting like, our organized crime rings and like, psychopaths, and the Punisher is fighting like rapists and like, murderers and the mob. And he's never gonna, like, they're not gonna call him up when Thanos comes and invades the planet.
Yeah.
But in DC Comics, they don't work that way. They generally, what they tend to do is they take the most popular characters and they put them in the most insane situations. So whenever there's a crisis, Batman is there, even though technically he operates within the same pay grade, as it were, that Daredevil does, because he's just a regular guy. But that would make him look cooler because he's like, dodging like the Omega beam from fucking Darkseid. It looks cool, so they go ahead and do that. But Marvel won't do that. I mean, there have been times where Daredevil's teamed up with Doctor Strange to fight fucking demons and shit, but when that usually happens, Daredevil acknowledges how insane that is, and he's like, this is insane. I don't know why I'm here, But like in general, though, they operate within a pay grade, and that's basically the point.
Spider-Man doesn't,
in this
though.
situation. Yeah, he's more variable, but he's still
more like
Batman. In his own books, though, he tends to be in the lower scale, but Spider-Man is extremely popular, so he'll get hoisted up and put into larger-than-life situations. All right. So anyway, let me look. So there's this thing I wanted to. This is my comparison. Okay, it's no surprise that stories in literature, film, and television are written with specific groups in mind, and a desire to appeal as much to that group as possible in order to create a loyal fan base where one may not have existed before. Romance novels are written with women in mind. Action movies and about heroes saving the world are usually written with men in mind, and stories of children attending a school of wizardry are written with young tweens in mind. Feminists would have you believe that, since gender is a social construct, these demographics are dated and exclusionary ideas at best and dangerous manipulations at worst. Marvel Cinematic Universe has recently launched its newest adult-themed Netflix original, Jessica Jones, just a few months after its first attempt, Daredevil. I watched both shows with enthusiasm upon their launch, and I enjoyed them both. Once Jessica Jones was finished and the final credits rolled, I started to think of both of them in contrast and came to some interesting realization. In Daredevil, the main character is experiencing a growth and hardship that is related to his morality that is being challenged. He, upon realizing he has a gift, immediately knows he wants to use it to help people and can see that his city of Hell's Kitchen is suffering. He is a man that wants to serve and protect those who are weaker than him and unable to protect themselves. He is also disabled and has issues with his temper and his Catholic guilt. He is a great and complex character who wants to do the right thing and is surrounded by a great cast of supporting characters that push and pull him, while those same supporting characters experience their own developments and their own story arcs. Foggy Nelson develops a closer friendship that hints at romance with a woman named Paige. Murdoch's old father figure and teacher Stick appears to complete a mission with the mysterious group that he is a part of. Paige herself does her own detective work while teamed up with an aging and cynical reporter, Ben Urich, and even the antagonist, Wilson Fisk, is dealing with managing a growing fracture in his organization while a romance of his own develops with Vanessa. So you see, you have all these characters that are doing their own thing, and then occasionally they intersect with Daredevil. Jessica Jones is very different by comparison. While Murdoch does everything in service of his city and is a truly altruistic goal, Jessica seems incredibly ambivalent about the idea of helping people because she tried it for a bit, and after running into the season's main antagonist Kilgrave, decides she never wants to do the hero thing again and instead becomes a private investigator. Even though her powers are more overt and even more useful than Daredevil's, one would argue, Jessica wants to instead take photographs and get drunk every night. It's almost playing against type too hard, but that's not really the most interesting thing. The most interesting thing about Jessica is that while Daredevil has a cast of supporting characters, all whom seem to have their own independent character arcs that occasionally overlap with Murdoch, and the season's climax, the several seasons mini-climaxes, rather, as many of these character arcs intersect with other arcs, Jessica Jones' supporting cast all seem to revolve very closely around her. Trish Walker is her best friend and her sister, and seems to almost have no job outside of occasionally doing her talk show and helping Jessica while they rebuild their estranged relationship. Malcolm, who is the junkie that lives in Jessica's building, at first seems to be one-dimensional until we realize the purpose that he ultimately serves, which links him directly to Jessica through Kilgrave. Hogarth, the lawyer, and her wife seem to have an arc all of their own, though they work with Jessica closely very often, and there is a climax which once again puts them in the line between Jessica and Kilgrave. Will Simpson would also appear to be building a separate plot with Trish Walker as a romance, until he ultimately goes crazy from his attempt to help Trish help Jessica. Luke Cage is written with Jessica very early on, or he's smitten with her, and whenever we see him, he's working with her on, or his interactions with her, as necessary to move his plot forward. And finally, Kilgrave is obsessed with Jessica, using everyone as disposable pawns to get to her. The story is good, and I'm interested to see where things go, but I find it interesting that the Daredevil story seems so much less personal and more broader in scope than the Jessica story. Now, of course, I think that might just be a consequence of the story itself, but what I find really interesting is that Kingpin is not, like, for example, in the Daredevil show, Kingpin doesn't give a fuck about Matt Murdock. He almost really, at first, he doesn't even give a fuck about Daredevil until Daredevil really becomes a pain in his side, and his ability to throw resources at him to stop him, proves to be fruitless. And eventually, he's basically faced with the reality that he has to actually deal with this guy personally. But it doesn't happen for a while. Kilgrave is obsessed with Jessica from the get-go, even like before the show has begun. So it's really interesting because, one, the story of Daredevil is more of a broad tale where there are lots of characters that overlap. It's sort of like the hero's journey, I guess, in a way. But they all are doing their own thing. Like Foggy's banging like wide-eyed chicks and and whatnot. He's doing his own thing on the side. But with Jessica, there isn't much going on except other people's relationship to Jessica. Even Hope is, her existence in the show, like how she gets dragged into the plot, connects her directly to Jessica. So, Scott.
Wow, that was a mouthful. Yeah, agreed on pretty much across the board. But the thing about Daredevil, I actually watched all the episodes. I watched all 13, unlike Jessica Jones, so I feel like I can actually talk about it a little bit better now. I feel like there's something. There's two things that bother me about the show. I feel like there's something missing. I feel like there's a little bit of a gap, and I think that gap might actually be the fact that they're trying to balance too many plates. And granted, the plates are kind of nice. I mean, you've got all these neat stories. You've got like the Karen and the Ben Ulrich stuff. You've got Kingpin. You've got all these little subplots going on. But it feels like, and I may, this may just be a matter of preference on my part, but I feel like there's not enough Daredevil in the show. It's good and I like it. I'm pretty surprised at how well it turned out overall, because it is a solid piece of work. But there's not that much Daredevil. I mean, I want to see more about. There's Secretary Karen. Jesus Christ, her superpower is fucking crying. That's all she fucking does.
That's the actress's superpower. Like I said before. She's
been
doing that since I saw her on True Blood. That was basically her superpower, was crying.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they cast her. They probably were like, we need a chick that can cry whenever we point at her. And they hired her because she was good at doing that.
I mean, that's all well and good and all, but it's just like, I don't care about her in the slightest bit. I mean, granted, she was integral to some of the story, but the fact that she's just kind of, and granted, I get it. She's been through a pretty traumatic experience, so she's pretty upset and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, every fucking scene, she's in tears. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't want to be like, get over it already or anything, but it's just like, be more than just that one dimension. So I guess those are the kind of things I'm kind of nitpicking at right now. Is just I just feel like there's not enough focus on Murdock or Daredevil. They could do some more with that, but that's situational. But I really think Murdock is really underplayed in this whole thing. And I think maybe I can't remember who it was, if it was Andrew or if it was Max, talking about how there's too much Kingpin in this, and I would agree with that also. Like there's no, I think I think he would have been better served had they left him for later on in the series and made him kind of this looming specter instead of having him hands-on. They should have kept him in the shadows a bit longer, I think. So, but overall, though, I think it's a great effort, though, for sure. It's much more than I expected, honestly.
Otter?
There were a lot of people who were like, "Oh, Daredevil is great, it's amazing, blah blah." I'm like, yeah, it's good, but there's pacing issues. At least with me, I thought there were pacing issues. When I think about the show, I really just remember people sitting and talking to each other. There's a lot of just people talking, and like that's all well and good, but that's what I remember about this show because I watched it with my mom. We also watched Jessica Jones in like a couple days, and it just started getting kind of repetitive. And it felt like they were really just trying to drag things out way too much. And that's just the thing that Netflix is wanting them to do, so I'm not necessarily going to blame the writers. But still, it feels like it could be less repetitive. I don't know. But it's okay.
Well, I think that the issue with pacing, like I thought that Daredevil was really well paced, and I liked the extra characters, and I also really liked that they gave. I don't need every villain to be humanized, so like to speak really quickly, because someone when we did our last show about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, somebody wrote a comment saying that one thing that we glossed over and we didn't talk about was the problem with the Marvel Cinematic Universe having too many throwaway villains, and I know that we like mentioned that while we were talking on this briefly, and I was thinking about that, and I've heard people say that like, oh, they're all generic and they always die at the end except for like Loki and stuff, and it just so happens that the villains that people like are the ones that don't get killed, like Loki, and because they actually are allowed to return and maybe cause more mayhem or whatever. But I think that when I thought about it, I said, well, if you need an antagonist in every story, and people want to see more characters adapted, and how would you do that for a series of films without basically taking the villain out of the story by the end of it? Like, how? I mean, I don't know what the solution to that would be. You could give them more screen time, but then wouldn't people say, well, I wanted more Guardians or more Iron Man or more Thor in this? I don't know. I mean, I guess, unfortunately, if you're building up to something, but each individual film has to have its own villain as well as the TV series and stuff. How would you get there without essentially either removing, neutralizing, or killing off the villain at the end of every film? Because you would have to succeed in that individual story while building up towards your larger story.
They could do is they just introduce the villains early on in the series. Like they have one villain in the first movie, somebody who's not that, like, who cares? And they also introduce other people like as characters, and then they become villains later. Sort of like what they were trying to do with Amazing Spider-Man, that whole series. That
one that was a complete and utter travesty.
The first one was really good. The second one, I enjoyed it, but I can understand why people didn't like it. But they were trying to introduce things to build up for later, but that didn't work out in the end because of Sony and whatever and people. But doing that would actually make more sense to give villains more screen time so that they seem more significant. Introduce them early on as sort of minor characters or somebody in the background manipulating the original villain, and then it gives them more screen time. But
I mean, the only thing I will say is I don't agree. Like, I don't particularly like that they kill them at the end all the time. But I think that may, at the end of every film, like for in most cases. But I think that may be because the way that they set up the threat, it's often so great that if they don't die at the end, then people are just gonna be like, oh, he's gonna come back? He's totally gonna come back. And then if that never happens, because ultimately it doesn't really matter if they kill him or not, if we never see them again, it's irrelevant. Because I think that they're going to get to a certain point in the film franchise, and they're just going to stop making them. I mean, like, it can't go on forever. So either way, it's just sort of like what has to happen. I don't think that every villain should die. I didn't like that as much, but I don't think that. I think that the idea that this is a bad thing that they have these throwaway villains is I don't know, like that's a bit too absolute for my taste. I think that it's just sort of necessary, at least to make them neutralized.
Well, most of
I
them
wouldn't
like
kill
put in
them.
prison because they're super powerful.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like Kilgrave, by the time you get to the end of Jessica Jones, the idea that Kilgrave could go to a prison, unless they made a special super prison, which they never really talk about. I mean, they do shield stuff, which would be a good idea, except for the fact that Jessica Jones doesn't want any help from anyone and wants to do everything herself because she's a strong, independent woman that don't need no system.
That's not why. It's because she doesn't want to drag anyone.
I know she doesn't want anyone to get hurt, but I'm just saying when she did use him, like when she used Simpson, it turned out to be super effective. So
it was super effective.
It was super effective. So even though that worked out before, there's no reason why it couldn't work again. But that's beside the point. What I'm getting at is unless they're like the way that they presented the threat, I think that people that are not comic book people would have wanted a final solution to happen by the end of a given series or film. And in the cases where they don't die, they're clearly planting the seeds for future things. Like, I think it's very intentional. Like, the Kingpin doesn't die at the end of Daredevil because he actually still hasn't become the Kingpin yet. And, like, he hasn't realized, who he is completely. He's actually growing as Daredevil is growing, And the reason why they haven't killed Loki is because same reason. I mean, I think that they're building up to something. But ultimately, he's going to be he's going to be in Ragnarok.
And so is Hulk.
What?
He's going to be in the new Thor movie. He's going to team up.
Oh, I know. Hulk's going to be in the new Thor movie.
And he's going to take over Asgard.
Hopefully he cuts loose. Matt, I know that you got to leave in a few. Do you want to say anything before?
Yeah, it's you guys have made some good points about Daredevil. I think the pacing, like I said, was good. I liked all the side characters because you can't have a show just based around one character. You know, like even in Jessica Jones, it kind of faltered by trying to shoehorn some of the small subplots, like everything with that annoying bitch of a neighbor. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the neighbor characters were
like they were essential to setting up the whole thing of that guy, Kilgrave making the dude kill himself. And I understand her dealing with the tragedy of her twin being, going away and stuff, but it's like that dragged on like just too damn long. Whereas Daredevil, that problem never, I don't think, ever really hit. Like everything that they did kind of led to certain points. It was like everything with Jessica and Karen Page and Ulrich was like tracking down Fisk's mom. That was trying to uncover things about his past to write an expose in order to, expose him for being the villain. Everything in Daredevil had a purpose. Not everything in Jessica Jones had a purpose, and I think that was a key difference.
That one guy in Daredevil, though.
I'm sorry, what?
I didn't like how they killed that one guy in Daredevil, though. I didn't think that made any sense.
What, killing off Ulrich?
Who? Because no one's watched it, but you just spoiled it. Yeah, that just didn't make any sense why they killed him off.
At this point, it's 8 months in, and we've already been spoiling everything else. So
I know, but
some haven't heard it. That's on them.
Yeah.
Some people are poor and can't afford Netflix.
$10 a month.
Are the methods.
Don't worry about the spoilers. We've been
Piracy,
spoiling
man.
it since it started. So.
Can I spoil the new Star Wars?
Yes, I have a spoiler on my website, and I'm doing a show on it tonight. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm not spoiling Star Wars.
The whole thing is like them killing off Ulrich was unfortunate because he was a good character, but at the same time, the handling of it made sense as a way to show the lengths that Kingpin will go regardless. It was him also getting his hands dirty and not sending goons, which I liked. Whereas that same exact moment that happened in Jessica Jones, because there was that same exact moment with the cop, was entirely pointless and wasted. Like that part was just like, wait, what? They did the same thing again? They killed the one token black guy?
They killed off Will Smith again.
Yeah, they killed off. Well, here I'm glad that you mentioned that, Matt. This is really interesting to me. I think the Ben Urich character was a really good character, and I think that them. I mean, they actually because he had that's another one that had his own arc. He had this stuff with his wife, he had his stuff with his job, and he was talking about what journalism. Like he had this thing where he wanted journalism to return to what it used to be. Like that was really good stuff. But I think that ultimately. One of the reasons why he died, and I didn't have too much of a problem with it, it saddened me because I like the character, but I think that's actually the point. It makes an impact. And it made me go, oh man, they killed Ben Urich, you know? But like ultimately, he kind of served his purpose in the story. The detective, it felt really random. Plus the fact that he was killed by Simpson for what appeared to be like questionable reasons, you know, like it was unnecessary. Compared to in Daredevil, you could see why the Kingpin felt that he needed to go. That was logical. But the death of the detective in the Jessica Jones was not as logical. It was like really random, and that's another parallel. Again, you know, it may not be fair to compare the two, but that's just how I see it. But what I find,
I agree.
Yeah, but what I find really interesting about Jessica Jones in particular, because Daredevil doesn't do this as much. Did you notice? Okay, I got to point this out. Did you notice that every black male on Jessica Jones was super noble and a good person, or they were a victim of something, and then when they recovered from that, they became super noble, good people? But every white dude was a complete douchebag, asshole, psycho, or they were like a decent guy that became a douchebag, asshole. Did you notice that? I noticed it right off the bat. Like there was like even the little tiny characters. So for example, in the Jessica Jones flashback where she's in the bar hanging out with Patsy Walker, and this douchey dude bro like corporate asshole goes over and flirts, and Jessica challenges him because she's a bitch to basically punch a punching bag, like this punching bag game.
That was so stupid.
And it's just basically to show him up. Like, boom, he does it, and then he makes her. She forces him to apologize. She calls him an asshole. Like, I'm like watching this. And I'm like, do dudes like this exist? Like this, you know, like that. Like they were all like that. Or Kilgrave, of course, he is. I don't know if you've read, Matt, but Kilgrave represents men, the patriarchy, Gamergate. He represents those things.
I've read all those things, yeah. I did a video where I was like, this is not a feminist show, regardless of what you're trying to make it out to be. It's really not.
Yeah. But that was like, so yeah, Kilgrave is all of those things. Simpson starts off likable, and I thought, oh shit, it's a decent white guy. But before long, he's like going crazy, and essentially he's killing his like cop friends. The black cop dude, you know, he's just a dude trying to do his job. He's trying to be a good cop. He's close to retirement. You know, you have that whole thing, and then he's the only sensible cop that wants to hear out Jessica and help her, and then he gets killed. And then there's, okay, I already mentioned the druggie, who is basically starts off, you know, a victim of crime, and Jessica saves him. Then he becomes a drug addict on something, I don't know what, because I'm like trying to figure out what drug. I guess it's heroin. And then what?
It doesn't matter. Let's just say it was drugs.
Yeah, well, he's just on drugs. He's on drugs. You know, like I'm like, I don't know what drugs do that, but okay. But you know, when she saves him, he immediately turns his life around, becomes super like you know, fucking social worker guy with '90s fashion, and immediately like helps everybody out. Well, she said that he wanted to be one.
Oh,
I remember in their comment.
Okay, but the twins, the
white dude was a super creepy, simpy dude.
No, he seemed nice.
He was creepy. That's what they were trying to show us. Even Jessica found him creepy as fuck.
But Jessica
she did not like him, and he would like appear at her door, and he'd be like,
"She didn't find him creepy. She didn't find him creepy.
She totally found him creepy.
She didn't. No, she found his sister creepy. She found him maybe odd, but there was sympathy for him.
It was like he was being abused by his sister.
Yeah, like she had sympathy for the guy. That's why she actually was upset when he died. Like, she was upset when he killed himself. She was upset for what Kilgrave did. But there's that line, too, Kilgrave says, well, you know, who can blame me? After 30 seconds, the guy was annoying. You would think the same thing. But she still didn't want to kill him, and she still was mad when he died and everything like that. So, no, the sister, she didn't give two shits about. right? But the guy she felt sympathy for because she could see that he was being controlled by his sister in the same way, very similarly to how Jessica was controlled by Kilgrave.
Okay, that's not bad. I'll have to look at it again. I thought that they were portraying both of them as being weird and creepy, like the incest twins, as Scott calls them.
They never even made it clear that there was incest.
No, they just they I think that Jessica assumed it. And
well, I
then,
think you were supposed to, but
I don't know. I don't know what their situation was. I thought they were just weird people that lived upstairs. That's what I thought. Then I think that Jessica assumed that they were having sex and like into kinky shit. And it might be a bit of projection on her part because they probably weren't. They were probably just weird. Like they had like their windows were like boarded up or cardboarded up or something, and but they were like very reclusive and strange. But I don't know that they were into weird shit. I know that he was into cooking.
He wore diapers.
Were those
I told you it was a diaper. I told you, I told you, Brian.
I thought that was like just tidy whiteys that were like baggy. Were those
that was a diaper, bro. That was a diaper.
I told
his
you.
sister probably makes him wear it. She's abusive.
Thank you, Matt. I love you so much right now. Seriously. God damn, I love you so much.
All right, well, that's if
Next
that's diapers, that's really fucking weird.
And she was beating him with a spatula. Fucking incest twins, dude. Sketchy fucking incest twins.
Why do you think that means incest? That means abuse.
Whatever. They're incest twins. It sounds better.
I want to point something out. Next season of Jessica Jones, if they do one, the main villain should be Mandrill.
The Mandrill? Oh, because another mind control guy would be good?
Yeah, who only controls women. And he's like an ape.
I don't know. I mean, that would
be funny. Oh, I love that.
But I doubt they do it, unless of course they want to push the rape narrative some more. I don't know.
No, Brian, you should do like a little comic thing, doing that where like Mandrill's the villain next time. Yeah,
triggered. But no, Matt, that's an interesting point about the neighbor. I thought that they were just trying to make him creepy white dude. Like I tried to think, what if it was a black guy? Would this be okay?
That's racist.
Well, if they had done that, Brian, it would have been racist. But
no, it would have just been normal. It would be like Medea stuff. I love those. Medea goes to Washington. Huh?
All right. Well, I guess. But overall, though, I did like both. But I think that Daredevil was stronger, personally.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree on that.
Yeah.
Although one thing that people kept pointing out in like news articles is like, this is the best thing Marvel's ever done. Are you retarded?
What?
Don't be retarded. People kept saying it was the best thing Marvel's done.
Oh, you talking about Daredevil?
No, Jessica Jones.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I've not seen that.
Stupid. Oh, I want to.
There was a lot of pushing for it because it was the first female-led thing. Look at the end of Ant-Man. Like the whole thing with the Wasp, and she's like, it's about damn time.
The first female-led thing? Hold on.
It's the first female-led Marvel property. That's what they're.
Marvel, okay.
It's like they never saw the first
what?
Yeah.
Have we never seen Wonder Woman with Linda Carter? Have we never seen Catwoman with Halle Berry?
But those are DC properties. Those
I know.
Stop with the logic, Scott.
I know, right?
You know that we have to live in it's 2015.
It's current year, fella.
So,
current year.
It's the current year, motherfucker.
It's the current year.
That's
Give me the time.
2014
That
anymore.
means that it's a new year of firsts, and we have to like discover all the firsts. So, Matt, you were saying about Jessica, Matt.
I've kind of forgot.
Oh, okay.
Because I do have to run in a minute.
No, I know. We should wrap it up.
Well, there's one thing I do want to say though, because people do bring this up a lot. People are upset about why there's no Daredevil in Civil War, why the cast of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't in Age of Ultron, and why we probably won't see Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Punisher show up during Infinity Wars in 2018 is because Marvel is currently split right now. For those of you guys who don't know, the Marvel Studios is currently kind of broken down between its television department and its cinema department, right? You've got Kevin Feige running the cinematic universe, and he's doing a great job. Then you've got Ike Perlmutter, who runs the television side of things. And it was Perlmutter running everything until just recently during the production of Captain America 3 when they got into huge disputes over the budget, and Feige threatened to walk, and Disney said, okay, we're going to make this so you only have to answer to us. right? So they split the Marvel Cinematic Universe in half, where Feige got the cinematic side of things, Perlmutter, who was very much a cheap ass, got the TV side of things. And so the likelihood of those characters crossing over now, until they solve this dispute, is probably not going to happen.
You know what, though? It kind of works better that way, though, to keep them separate. I don't think they need to have
I
any
disagree.
crossover.
I disagree
Well,
100%.
For the moment, I think
Yeah,
they need
for
to
the
build
moment.
them and let them grow on their own strengths and let them, find their footing, as it were. But I mean, eventually it would be great to have a
And
crossover.
Civil War would be fucking awesome. I think having him, having them, because they need to like hide from Tony, so they go to New York, they go to Hell's Kitchen, like, oh hey, here's this masked devil dude. He can help.
I think it's
keep
pretty
you guys
clear
safe.
Civil War is not going to be anything like the comics.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. It's not. And funny enough, they're actually releasing Civil War 2 in comics right before the release, where Iron Man is versus Falcon, or well now Captain America.
Right.
Okay. Well, that would be interesting, but Jesus Christ, Matt, how much do you want the Russo brothers to take on? I mean, god damn, how are you going to balance all
do
those?
everything?
Yeah.
Do all the
Because
things.
god damn it, if they're able to handle Infinity War with I think Infinity War is going to have Miss Marvel and Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think that's going to be everybody.
Yep, it is.
Well, it's a movie.
Except for the TV people. Although a nod or a cameo, by Shield would be cool. I think that would be.
It'd be
it
nice.
Would be
if
nice.
Coulson back
Yeah.
into the fold.
Even if it was just a cameo. I mean,
If they did that, that would make the Avengers fall apart, though, because they're like, he lied to us. We don't really like each other.
no, they could just be talking just only to Nick Fury. Like the Avengers don't have to know. It'd just be like a phone call to Phil Coulson. Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't realize that, but I think I agree with Scott. For now, I think it would be better that they can focus on their individual things and then hopefully build up to something. And I do think that the Russo brothers probably could do it, but I just wouldn't want to. I don't want to give them here's every character ever, make it work.
Well, they've been able to handle the Arrested Development cast, because they did a lot of episodes of that.
No, they did, and they did some good episodes of
I wish
Community.
they'd go back to sitcoms, though. There's no good sitcoms anymore. Thanks to
Well,
them going and doing Marvel stuff.
Maybe when they're done.
They'll never be done.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna wrap it up. Guys that are listening, we didn't get into the articles, but maybe we'll talk about those another time. So, guys that are listening, if you have any thoughts about the Daredevil and the Jessica Jones Netflix shows, and independently, how they compare to each other, how they compare to the rest of the universe, please leave a comment. Also, what do you think about the throwaway Marvel villains? Is this sort of like a necessary thing in order to get, to tell the story? Or could they have handled this in a different way? Would you really want a whole bunch of guys in prison? And what other Netflix properties would you like to see? I'm very much looking forward to Punisher. And Iron Fist, I hope that they get like some fucking UN Wu Ping choreographers to do the fight stuff, because I think that would be the shit. And I'm looking forward to Luke Cage as well. But I also like them to do Moon Knight. I think Moon Knight deserves more credit.
You
What?
really want Moon Knight in there,
I do.
don't you,
I want
Mike?
Moon Knight. Dude, that would be the shit, though.
I would tend to, I'd agree with you there.
Okay. Also, I think that Patsy Walker would be, because
Hellcat.
you know that she ultimately is Hellcat, right? So
Yeah.
that could be cool. I think Blade should get his own show too.
No.
Yeah, Marvel got the property. They got the rights to Blade back.
Yeah, but Blade needs movie budget, not TV show budget.
A
'cause they
Netflix
did
show
Blade-
has a good sized budget. They could
Have you
spend-
seen the Blade TV show though, Brian?
No, the one with Sticky
Ooh,
Fingers from
yeah.
Onyx. No
Ooh.
thanks.
No.
Okay, that was
good.
Spike TV. All right.
Yeah, it was not good.
They were cheap.
Oh,
as
that's true. That was Spike TV. Yeah, good point. Good
No.
point.
Trust me, I
I'm.
pitched them ideas a few years ago. They are cheap as fuck.
You know who they could? You know what they could do is they could ask. I think this is what they should do with Blade. If they bring Blade back and they put him in Netflix, what they should do: cast Michael B. Jordan to play Blade because he would be really good, and then ask Guillermo del Toro if he would do a series.
Dare I say it? Mobius? By Del
No,
Toro.
This is what they should do.
Del
They
Toro
should-
Mobius. Come on.
Yeah, no, Del Toro would be great for that. I'd also like to do something H.P. Lovecraft, but we're getting a little off topic.
What
But
they should do is they should do a BBC co-production where they do like the MI13 and then have Blade on it, like they did in the recent comics.
yeah, they could do that too. I think Blade could carry his own thing, but
No.
he could. Blade,
I know
he
he
could.
could, but
Put Whistler in there. Maybe do all of the. He was part of that group, the Night Stalkers in the comics.
Yeah.
Do them all. Do it like a thing. Okay, so anyway,
For creepy people.
tell us what you guys think in the comments. Thank you, Mundane Matt, for coming on and coping with all of our spurging. And yeah, we hope that we can get you back on when we talk about something else that interests you. So
Well, I'm interested in a lot of stuff, so thanks for having me, guys,
Yeah.
and I will see you guys later.
well, actually, we're gonna do a show about Star Wars pretty soon. So
Ooh, you should have
I'm
me
seeing
on.
it tomorrow, and then I'm
I'm
seeing
s-
it Friday morning.
I'm seeing it tomorrow too.
So yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll probably just do either just like do them in 3 movie chunks. Like we'll do one on the prequels, and then we'll do one on the other 3, the
What
good
about
ones.
the TV series? And the Ewok movies.
Okay. No. We're done.
You